I don't know about you all, but these days when people ask me how I'm doing, I'm not really sure how to answer. I'm not sure what information they want to know. So it depends obviously who it is, if it's one of you, if it's a colleague, if it's a family member, but people say, how are you doing? And it's hard to know exactly how to respond because there's so much that is so stirring in different ways. And I'm not even talking about the political landscape. I'm just talking about the emotional landscape, the reality of what we're living through as a civilization right now. And yes, some of it is political. And so I just think about it what I think about when I'm asked that question is more about what do I do to take care of myself? Because we all need to have ways in which we take care of ourselves. Self-care is so important, especially those of us who are activists in different ways, or those of us who serve on the city council. We have to have methods to take care of ourselves. And that's going to be different, of course, for all of us. And I just sort of putting out a question, not to talk about just yet, but just to think about what allows you to draw strength? Are there places or activities or people that you can be with that allow you to draw strength, to maintain resilience when it feels so hard? We all need those places. We all need those relationships. We all need those practices. Because for some of us, it's spiritual practice. For some of us, it might be getting regular massages or other types of body work. For some of us, it might be exercise. For some of us, it might be being outside in nature. For some of us, it might be holding on tight to our newly born babies. There are so many ways that we can derive strength and comfort. And I think that theme, in a sense, is coming in this parsha. And it comes, for me, specifically in Be'er Lachai Ro'i, which is the name of the well. That according to Ramban, to Nachmanides, Yitzchak, Isaac, goes back to that well many times. And it's the place where he goes to pray. It's the place where he goes to receive comfort. It's the place where he goes to confront the trauma that he is inevitably faced, although Bruce disagrees with me. He thinks Yitzhak is not traumatized, and we can talk about that later. But I don't think that any man, no matter how old he is, having experienced his father holding a knife against his throat, cannot be traumatized. Abraham and Isaac never speak again after the Akedah, which was the end of last week's Parsha. And we see this sort of estranged relationship in a certain way, where each of them is somehow on a mission, if we follow the Midrash, to find a new partner. In the case of Isaac, he wants to find Hagar and bring her back to Abraham. And in the case of Abraham, he sends his servant off to find a wife for Yitzhak. As if they can't have a relationship with each other. And so they sort of mediate this way in which each of them will be nurtured and held by a new relationship, which you could read as being we don't have any possibility of a father-son relationship anymore. It's one interpretation. But going back to this well, the well, Be'er L'chai Ro'i, my Rabbi Jonathan, not Sachs, whose yahrzeit was yesterday, by the way, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs' yahrzeit was yesterday, but Rabbi Jonathan Wittenberg translates Be'er L'chai Ro'i as the well of a living God who sees me. The well of a living God who sees me. This, more than anything else, I think, talks to this notion of self-care. Where do we feel fully seen for who we are? Yitzhak, it seems, feels fully seen when he is at that well. And in that place where he can be fully seen by his God, or just by life itself, he is somehow able to find a place of prayer and possibility and hope and healing from the trauma that he experienced as he stands at that well. And of course the well is first given its name not by Yitzhak but by Hagar, because it's the same well that Hagar is at when she's at the well with Ishmael, and she is giving up hope, and she thinks they're both going to die of thirst in the middle of the desert. And then it says God opened her eyes and she saw the well, and the well became known as Be'er Chai Ro'i, the well of a God who sees me. Hagar, in her desperateness, in her alienation, in her banishment, in her desperation, in her lack of hope, in the feeling like her child and her are going to die, she somehow is in a place where she feels seen by God. In our places of desperation, in our places of desolation, in our places of trauma, in our places of feeling so hurt by the realities of the world sometimes, where are the places that we can go? Or who are the people that we can be with where we feel absolutely seen for who we are? Absolutely held and nourished by a kind of mayim chayim, a living type of water that can nourish us and heal us and hold us and allow us to cry, allow us to laugh, allow us to dance, allow us to scream, allow us to just be whatever we need to be. We all need places like that. And some of us don't have them. And some of us hopefully find it in this community. And some of us find it in other communities or other activities or other relationships. Rabbi Jonathan Wittenberg quotes a Hasidic Torah commentary called Be'er Mayim Chaim, which is interesting in itself because Be'er Mayim Chaim means a well of living water, right? A well of living water. So this particular commentary, and the author of Be'er Mayim Chaim is Rabbi Chaim of Chernovich, who was a 18th century Hasidic rabbi. And he talks about the process by which Hagar named that well. And he says she named it as a true and enduring testament that the Holy Blessed One sees the pain of the oppressed and watches with mercy over the lowly and rejected. This well is a sign for all generations that there is none like God who hears the prayers of every mouth and sees the sorrows of every creature. This is the meaning of Be'er Chai Ro'i, the well of the living one who sees. That is to say, this well is a sign that the living God sees me, that the eternal God sees all my troubles and redeems me. It's a powerful commentary, I think. And we see Yitzchak, according to Ramban, going back to that place again and again and again to seek comfort, to seek strength, to seek healing, as I said. And then when we see Yitzchak and Rivka meeting each other for the first time, it says he's just come from that place. He's just come from Be'er Chai Ro'i, he's just come from that well. And then it says, Vayetze Yitzchak lasuach basadeh lifnot arev, that Yitzchak comes out to something in the field at dusk, lifnot arev, as evening is approaching, you could say. And the commentary says, lasuach can mean to converse with, lasuach can mean to meditate. For the rabbis of the Talmud, it says, ein sicha ela tefillah. The rabbis of the Talmud in Masechet Brachot say there's no sicha, no conversing other than prayer, and therefore Yitzchak was praying. And this is part of the same midrash in the Talmud that talks about, and I mentioned it earlier on today, the midrash that connects Shacharit, the morning service, with Abraham, Mincha, the afternoon service, with Yitzchak and Ma'ariv, the evening service in Parsha 2 weeks' time, when it says Vayifga, like Yaakov came upon a certain place and lay down his head on the rocks, and then he had the dream of the ladder. And the rabbis there say, "En pegia ela tefillah." There's no just random coming upon a place other than it must be prayer. And for Avraham it says, "Vayakom," he gets up early. And the rabbis say, "En kima ela tefillah." There's no getting up early other than getting up early to pray. So in the rabbinic mind, these framed times during a day are connected specifically with prayer/spiritual practice, right? So Abraham in the morning, Isaac in the afternoon, and Yaakov in the evening. So Isaac coming from the Be'er Chai Ro'i, where according to Ramban he's been praying, and then he comes into the field and he prays even more, And then it says, he was lasuach basadeh, he was praying in the field, and then it says, vayisa einav, he lifted up his eyes, vahinei gamalim ba'im, and behold, camels were coming. And on one of the camels was Rivka. And the Kli Yakar, 17th century North African commentator, says he was praying so hard for his soulmate, and he lifted up his eyes, and Rivka's on the camel, as if to say that the prayer instantly was granted. And this is part of a teaching that Ben Hashmashot, this time of day that is a kind of twilight, a liminal time between where it's like not quite day and not quite night, the mincha time is kind of this time that's most powerful for our prayers, right? It's Suda Shlishit, it's the third meal of Shabbat, which is seen as this time of Ben Hashmashot where our deepest prayers can somehow be addressed and answered, and that's what kind of Yitzhak is in. But going back to where he was before, this idea that some of us find prayer difficult, obviously. Maybe we all find prayer difficult. Some of us don't consider ourselves to be spiritual people, whatever that might mean. Some of us are deeply spiritual people. Some of us find spiritual practices that are outside the realms of traditional Jewish practice. But I think the invitation of the Parsha is to recognize that to find those places of comfort and strength and healing and reconciliation even, we need somehow to have something that we might have an experience that we could call a spiritual experience, whether that's being in shul on Shabbat at Bonei Shalom and praying together in the community, or whether that's some kind of morning practice that we have, or maybe for some of us it's praying 3 times a day, like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But there's just something in this crazy world that we're living in, where we're all carrying some different version of pain and trauma and anxiety, that we need to find, I think, for ourselves, Be'er l'chai ro'i, a well of a living God who sees me. Because in those places where I am seen and held for who I am, that's where something beyond what we might think of as possible can happen, I think. And how interesting that towards the end of the Parsha we're told that that's where Yitzhak ends up going to live. The Torah says, V'garsham, Yitzhak went and made his home at the same well, Be'er l'chai ro'i. And so this idea that the perpetual revisiting of a place where Isaac has felt that sense of connection and that sense of being seen, that's where he needed to be. So I'm just wondering, curiously, if anybody would be willing to share the place, perhaps for them, where they feel that they are seen, and therefore perhaps a place where they can really pray authentically or be held by others authentically. Yes, Jenny.
I would say when I'm in a conversation or in a witnessing space where I'm able to share and there's no comments, there's very little from the person, just like this energy of faith and really deeply hearing me, where I feel so seen and heard and not judged, knowing that the person that I'm in front of knows that feelings come and go and opinions come and go, and I'm a fluid, ever-evolving person. It's not like a static thing. That's when I feel.
Beautiful. I'm going to try it and just in a sentence, just because there are people on live stream who won't have heard that, but Jenny Sandler just shared that she feels that sense of being seen when she's in a conversation with someone who is really listening to her and seeing her without judgment. Is that a fair summary?
I belong to a Jewish chorus in Denver, a women's chorus. It's small, and I feel very nurtured there, and lifting our voices together, I think really brings us all a lot of peace.
Beautiful.
And joy, even if we're not feeling it in other parts
Yes.
of our lives.
And shared that she's in a small women's chorus, and just being together and raising voices together is a source of great strength and joy, even when they're not necessarily feeling joyful. Robert?
Yeah, I'm thinking of the times, excuse me, from Avot, when multiple people gather together and the Shekhinah comes and sort of hovers, and the verb to me is you're sort of soaking in a presence.
Beautiful.
And I think that happens when we come in this congregation together, whether it be to study formally or just to be with each other, that presence comes.
Beautiful. Robert was just sharing that based on Pirkei Avot, that there's this idea of a presence being among us when we gather, and that sometimes that happens here in this congregation, whether we're studying or coming together in different ways, that somehow this other presence comes in and holds us and sees us, maybe. Yes, Kali?
Only with my husband, my kids, and my sister can I bring 100% of myself, but with my other communities, I can bring like 50 to 75%. And as long as I have enough of those different communities where I can show a different part, then, I get to be seen across communities, but it's not possible in any one other than my family.
That's a really important insight. I think what Gali shared is that there's only in her immediate family can she feel 100% that she can show who she is, but that in other spaces, other communities, there's like 50 to 75%. I hope it's more like 85% here, but no, it's fine. It is what it is. And that's probably true. I mean, Gali didn't say this, but I'm adding that's probably true for all of us, that there are places where we can be fully ourselves, and there are places where we can be partially ourselves, and if we combine them together, then we can feel seen in totality. Yeah, I think that's kind of what you said. Is that? Yeah. Leo, I see your hand.
Well, I feel really good when I'm in nature.
Yeah. Yeah, Leo said he feels really good when he's in nature, which definitely I think is true for all of us. I feel really good when I'm skiing. Thank God ski season's starting. Shoshana.
Like the moment when I was moment where I walk through the door and given books, that's like a silent invitation into something. Just like invitation that's just like zero expectation, zero, like it's just gonna happen. You're gonna hand books when you walk through the door. That's it. That kind of just calling in.
Beautiful. Shoshana shared that when she walks into this space and is handed books, it's like an invitation just to be here without any expectations, just to be. Any last comments? Yes, Nora?
For me, it's this beautiful beauty. I find it very warming and very welcome. And I very much look forward to coming at you and being with everybody. It's just a pleasure for me. I've gone to temple my whole life, but never anything like this. This is an amazing place. It really is. Picks me up.
Thank you. I paid her to say that. Norma shared that she finds the warmth and welcoming of this community, that space where she looks forward to coming every Shabbat, and it just gives her a sense of belonging and being seen. You didn't say that, but I'm adding that because that was the prompt. Well, we'll draw it to a close because there's Jody and Larry are sponsoring Kiddush, and people are probably hungry. But I do hope that we can be that for each other to whatever extent, even if it's only 50 to 75%, but that we can somehow create a space where we can see each other and where we can feel nurtured in each other's presence, where we can feel nurtured by Jewish tradition, by prayer, by community, and by Shabbat. Because Shabbat for me is, that's my answer when people ask me, how do you take care of yourself? I say Shabbat. Even though I work on Shabbat, like I'm paid to do this right now, but even though I work on Shabbat, there's something every week where Shabbat is still Shabbat. Like for me, it's like I am addicted to, the doom casting and all the rest of it, and just, seeing all of the alerts coming in and the messages and the WhatsApp and the blah, 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 and then I always turn off my phone right before Shabbat, right before lighting candles, and there's just this like, and it doesn't matter if I'm anxious about what I'm going to talk about the next morning, or it doesn't matter if I'm, anxious about the services and who's leading, and whoops, we don't have Torah readers, and I have to, none of that matters, because Shabbat is still Shabbat. And so I think Shabbat in itself is like a be'er l'chai ro'i. Shabbat has the capacity and the quality to be a well of nourishing water where a living God is able to see me fully for who I am. Shabbat Shalom.